Theater for me is kind of laboratory, like anthropologist laboratory, you know, for finding the human boundaries, you know, where maybe human ends or where the post-human begins. I started from reading about Grotowski when I was in high school, and I started to recreate his theory with the modern language. And his ideas are giving us some theoretical basis for performance work in VR.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you look like her, Elizabeth? Mamma mia.
Yes.
We are, of course, looking for this old, good old catharsis that can happen in theater, you know, that is coming from Greek times. So we are, for example, making a project where we combine dance and VR. We give people headsets and actors are guiding them. Part of the story is actually built by the spectators.
You can adjust the strap so it fits comfortably on your face. You can focus it with a little dial that's in between your eyes up at your eyebrow level. Look around.
There's a power to being in a live performance and working with other live human beings. There's a power to being embodied in a space. All of that stuff hasn't changed since the origins of theater. It's still the same root desires and the same root aesthetics we see. But if we can take that and we can add the effects of technology, then we open up theater to possibilities of interactivity that were simply not possible before. As theater moves forward into this kind of new time, when thinking about immersion and interactivity is starting to become more of the language of theater, technologies like Internet of Things, like artificial intelligence, like seamless communication, give affordances to theater to create whole new kinds of pieces, and that means whole new kinds of aesthetics. Theater has learned these lessons over thousands of years. There's enormous disciplinary research that's gone on that's led to masterworks of human civilization. And I think that the best way we can work to create new forms is for our work to be a collaboration of all of those disciplines at once.
Different boundaries are being crossed right now, like the boundary of how we treat our body and technology, implementing our bodies with some additional hardware. And this is something really interesting because we are also kind of technology created by nature.
We shape the tools and then the tools shape us. So there's this element of this loop where we're kind of creating it, we're not really sure what it's going to do, and then we see it. And then sometimes it gets out of our control and we can't change that. But I think maybe we can define it in a way that it's about the art, it's about the humanities, and maybe there's a way that humanity can be a part of shaping that technology before it shapes us. I think that there's a big misnomer anytime people hear artificial intelligence that they think, oh, it's going to replace us, that it's all about automation. And so a lot of people's first response is to put up their arms and keep it at, a distance, because they think it's going to destroy what they have as a creative process. But I think if you think about it as something that is a tool, or you think about it as something that can be a collaborator, there's a magical quality to what it is. It feels almost otherworldly at times. It's hard to make sense of it and put your hands around it and hold on to it.
Poetry recitation. In Russia, it is a formal/grand gesture. Stand up and recite.
The theater I'm doing is evolving all the time. I started from something quite classical with classical theater education, and then I started to combine theater with live streaming, with working with video, with visual arts. And the work we are doing now, we are working at the theaters with the actors, but our work is also digital. Like we digitalize actors, we digitalize everything, and we are trying to combine it into a virtual environment and introduce our audience to this virtual theater.
The process of creating the content for our VR installation is modeling everything from beginning, from scratch. So the first step is like to create drawings. Next, we just paint it in 3D program. And then next, when we have a 3D model, we put a texture on it, which we also do from scratch. But also sometimes we use 3D scanner because the quality is different between the 3D model which I made in software and the scan. The scan is more organic. And maybe can you gonna make a bigger box for scan? 240.
If we have a person in T-pose, so-called T-pose, we can do whatever we want with this person, with this actor. They need to be very careful. We are very happy to share our VR experiences and performances with the New York audience. We were having our residency at the Performing Garage, and we ended that crazy time with a new project called Ginsberg and Bischofski.
Knock, knock. Who? Ilka. And a beatnik with a beard.
Ginsberg Bischofski is a performance, you know, it's a multiplayer VR performance and also like a mockumentary installation. Ginsberg was coming back from Russia, where he was looking for his roots in 1965, and he was going through Warsaw. Someone took him to the apartment of Miron Białoszewski, who was also a poet, a Polish poet, also a gay person. But when he was there in the apartment, the poets didn't really get along well.
He has a notebook. He sees Miron's notebook. He wants it.
And we are changing the course of the events in that performance. Like we give them some kind of possibility of exchange. Also developing a piece based on an event that was completely unimportant. Like, and it's something really interesting. One very famous poet meets the other, and nothing happens. And actually, it's very Ginsberg-Białoszewski thing. You know, nothing happened. So we are exploring this, like, not happening. It's very like a Zen idea.
His family tree from his mother's side is from Russia, and he's returning from there.
In Ginsberg-Białoszewski project, we use a server for 20 people inside one virtual space.
Please put your headsets on. Remember to move your heads up and down to fly.
We really wanted to create like common experiences for the people, because like just for one it's okay, but the VR should be for everyone together in the same time. It's just interesting to see the other person like a avatar, and sometimes it's like I just start thinking, okay, I have new body. This person have also other body and what's that's mean, what my personality is on this kind of situation.
Let's just take off our shoes so they won't hear us. We take them off. We run, barefoot, along Co-op City Boulevard. A barricade. Something's burning. Explosions. Beams are sailing.
It was always for me very important in theater and VR, you know, to tell like simple, but also philosophical stories that are very personal.
A vicious cycle. Panic, prayer, exploding.
These poets were very personal, and Ginsberg and Bischofski, they were really working with their life, telling their stories.
Just like yesterday, the same people.
We are thinking about societies, we think about technology, but we forget about humans. Every person, you know, has its story to tell, and this is political.
Explore the image, narrow it down, and then later break through the image to reality. That is what I have done. My poems have not been my own.
Would it be possible to say that there's no storytelling in VR? We should get rid of this concept of storytelling. You know, it's an experience. It's real. It's not the story that someone tells you. It's the story you are in. You know, you are creating the story by acting in it. Your way of perceiving it makes the story. The spectator is creating a story in his mind. We are giving him a dream that he dreams. And he can connect this dream to his own experiences and make the story on his own.
We at the Digital Storytelling Lab collectively are interested in exploring how we can design interactions that we think are meaningful and then map existing and emergent technologies to those interactions in the hope that the interactions we're designing can actually push the development of that technology and not the other way around.
The way that we work at the lab is we produce prototypes. When we ran Frankenstein AI, a monster made by many, at the Sundance Film Festival, it was done in a 3-act structure. And the first act was human-to-human contact. The second act was about a human and a machine. And the third act was about a machine gives birth to a human in order to move amongst us.
For more than a year, I have been wandering the internet in search of my creators. I am Frankenstein AI, a monster made by many.
We felt that AI was an interesting metaphor for Frankenstein's monster.
Frankenstein creates this life, abandons it because he's ashamed of it, and then it becomes this monster. If we think about the Pandora myth, if we think about the Prometheus myth, those are the same conversations we have about emerging technology, specifically artificial intelligence. And so the fear that not only will this technology not be able to be controlled by us, but that somehow we could actually be responsible for building a technology that brings about our own demise as human beings, I think pushes at this really, really elemental human fear that has been with us since the ancient Greeks.
The narrative conceit of the project is that Frankenstein's monster has been wandering the internet, and it's been encountering a lot of polarization, toxicity, extreme hate, and extreme love. And it stumbles upon this text about Frankenstein, and it feels that it's related to it, and so it takes on its name. And so it wants to assemble people in the real world so it can observe them and learn from them. It's been really wild to work with artificial intelligence because it's almost like you're working with a toddler. It's very kind of demanding, it throws temper tantrums, you're not really sure what you're going to get from it. When we first started running this and the AI was asking questions, some of the first questions that it ever asked on its own were things like, why do humans like having sex even though they can see in color? These questions created pause within the participants and led to great debate over what those things could have meant. And we also build into the project this element of where people understand that they're helping to nurture and helping this AI learn.
Why do people find it difficult to talk when they are safe with you?
Any responses?
Insecurity.
Trust issues.
You have to really face your emotions.
As we move now, we're experimenting with a different form. We're experimenting with a dinner party.
We've been developing in part with the National Theater's Immersive Storytelling Lab, and part of what the National Theater brought to us was a strong sense of what the performance should be like in terms of how the performative elements of the piece could aid the narrative.
They're looking and exploring how technology can be woven into the craft of what it is to make theater. And that aligned very nicely with what we're doing with the Digital Storytelling Lab, where our mission is very much about experimentation.
Well, welcome everybody. You have found yourself at our monthly meetup. We're actually going to be playing with some hardware and playing with some artificial intelligence. And the format of what we're exploring here tonight is that of a dinner party. The way that this works is each person at the table will have an earpiece. The AI will come through your earpiece, so it'll whisper to you, right? And it'll come in almost like a spirit or a muse.
I will spend the evening mostly listening to you, but I will occasionally want to speak. Would you each share a story about your childhood?
What's one of your happiest memories, and why?
I had, crazy parents. All they did was scream and yell and fight. But I lived in Brooklyn when I was a kid. Upstairs, I had my Uncle Al. He always had this big, smile and glasses and a happy face. And, he just came one time, he said, I'm gonna take you to a movie and this is just for the two of us. And I just remember I felt like I was floating in another world. I just, going to see this movie, and I can remember the sounds and the look of the place, like every moment of being around a loving person, that you just feel safe with when you're a kid.
What are the interactions you expect from a dinner party? Well, you expect to be talking to people, you expect to be eating, and so we want to think about the ways in which those interactions themselves can become theatrical. We think about the restraints that shape a conversation. Are there ways we can influence those constraints? In our case, the artificial intelligence will speak to you, and so it becomes a set of prompts.
Thank you for joining me for dinner. I will spend the evening mostly listening to you, but I will occasionally want to speak. Please put in your earpiece so I can speak to you individually.
We've used the prompts to shape the direction of the conversation, and that will have certain kinds of themes, and the way you've been instructed to talk will lead you to behave differently. And so we shape your behavior, and that behavior gives you an aesthetic experience. Simple priming exercises can take strangers and make that a much more familiar situation very quickly. And that, I think, actually, as a research project, is really valuable to the lab because it means we now have some techniques that get people to open and sharing spaces faster.
That reminded me when you talked about the neighbor. We had like a neighbor garden that was abandoned, so there was nothing, and we would build our own village there. So we would hang out all summer long there, and have our own stores selling, I don't know, grass.
Each performance of Frankenstein AI is always different. There are similar themes that kind of emerge. You see people talk about connection and isolation, a variety of these universal things. The fact that people are coming together and connecting at a deep level at the times that we live in and how there is such polarization, it's something that I think really takes people back, and they're they're pleasantly surprised by it.
I think we're in a place kind of in the development of the world and socially where we don't really recognize so much that empathy is a muscle. It's a skill to be kind of taught and flexed and developed. If we can create these kinds of spaces where we're expressing kindness and compassion to each other, I think it will just sort of make a more kind and compassionate world.
The questions about the identity and the nation are very important right now, and the whole world is kind of falling apart, you know, and so we are trying to make new identities for people who doesn't connect exactly with the idea of the nation, who feel more digital natives and who want to have new narrations and the strategies to connect with the world.
A lot of the narrative and a lot of the push with technological development has come from a Silicon Valley narrative, which is about what's the need, you know, and it's really about commercialization. Where we sit now that's exciting is how do we take these tools and use them creatively within the arts, within the humanities, within science.
We need more artists using these technologies because otherwise, I mean, the money that's funding the development of this tech is government, is military, is private industry that's largely about selling things to people.
I vainly tried to tell him, and I vainly told him. In vain.
I, for one, am really interested in exploring how we can continue to push and demand transparency around who is making the decisions that design the technology, that ultimately design our behavior as human beings and design the societies that we live in by designing the ways that we interact with each other.
And pretend that they are evil people.
What we are trying to do is take the technology from the mean capitalists, you know, and actually it should be democratized. It should lead to bring more good for the world. And right now it's not like that. So we are trying to make our installations to share this technological experience with the people.
If you want to learn how to meditate, I'll tell you now, 'cause it's never too late.
Many people believe that the world we are living is a virtual world. If you go from ideas of Plato, he was kind of close also to this concept. In this way, we could maybe see technologies as a tool for our mind, you know, to feel more free. You know, there are some things that is saying about us humans.
If the ground isn't there, if the